So, good morning everyone. Welcome to 29th lecture of Grid and Cloud Computing. So, in this lecture, we are going to discuss some of the software and middleware for grid computing, and we'll continue our discussion what we have done in the last class. And this class will continue this part, and we'll try to cover this part. First of all, we are going to see in the Globus Toolkit 4, that is GT4, how the data is managed, right? The data management using the GT4. So you can see there is a grid resource allocation manager, that is GRAM, right? And this GRAM module supports web services, okay, for initiating, monitoring and managing execution of the computational jobs in the grid. And if you see in the grid case, the grid applications generally provide, okay, access to and integrate large quantities of data at multiple sites. I told you that in grid computing we are relying on multiple organizations, right? All the computational resources participated in the grid is not belongs to a single organization. It is belongs to multiple organizations, right? Like that, multiple organizations are integrated together to provide large quantities of data or processing things, right? And if you see this GT4, that is Globus Toolkit 4 tool, can be used individually. You can only use GT4, or GT4 can be integrated with others, right? GT4 can be integrated with other tools. Okay, that is integration of two different tools. One is GT4 with other tools to find the solution of efficient data access, right? So GT4 you can alone use, you can use with other tools as well. So there are some other tools. There are a few GT4 tools are there. One of the tool is called Grid FTP. And FTP, you know, FTP stands for your file transfer protocol, right? When you want to transfer a large amount of data from one place to another place, you can use this Grid FTP, right? And Grid FTP supports reliable, secure, fast memory to memory and disk to disk data movement over a high bandwidth wide area network, right? So then when you require the data to transfer from one computer to another computer, okay, the data size may be in the TB or in the petabytes. So there you require high bandwidth. If bandwidth is very high, then the data transfer is much more faster. If bandwidth low, then it is difficult, right? So this Grid FTP is providing that so that you can transfer the data securely, as well as the transport time is also very less. Apart from that, Grid FTP supports various additional features that we discussed in some class. That is something called as parallel data transfer. Another is called as strict data transfer. Both are supported by Grid FTP, and it also supports your third-party data transfer, right? So Grid FTP has benefits from using the Globus security infrastructure as well. That is GSI, right? For securing the communication, they are using Globus security infrastructure. And if you see a statistics here, so the grid has achieved 27 gigabits per second, 20.67 gigabits you can transfer per second, end-to-end transfer using this wide area network. Imagine 27 gigabits you can transfer per second using the grid FTP. So how much faster it is? Okay, this is one of the GT4 tools. Another GT4 tool is called as RFT, that is called as reliable file transfer. Previously that is FTP, file transfer protocol. This is reliable file transfer. So it provides the reliable management of multiple grid FTP transfer. So it is integrating multiple grid FTP into a single unit and providing the reliable management, right? It is managing multiple grid FTPs at a glance, right? And you can say it is used to orchestrate the transfer of million of files among many sites simultaneously. Many sites means many, you can say many organizations which is available in all over the world. Okay, So the data transfer from one site to another site, like I told you in grid 5000, if you remember, there are 5000 in grid 5000. There are 9 sites are there. Among these 9 sites, the data transfer may happen between one site to another site, right? So you may transfer million of files or billion of files from one site to another site, so that the data can be processed in other place or data can be stored in other places. So such big transfer can be supported by our RFT, right? The next one is your RLS, that is your replica location service. As the name suggests, replica means you are keeping the copy of one computer's data with other computer, right? That is called as a replica of the data. So here you can see RLS is a scalable system for maintaining and providing access to information about the location of the replicated files. Suppose I have stored a 1 GB of file here, where these 1 GB of files are replicated, means duplicated. Backup copy is stored in, let's say, this computer and this computer. What is the advantages? When this computer will fail, you can also retrieve from other computer system. So, in which location you have stored such a duplicate files, that will be taken care by the replica location service. Fourth type of tool is called as OGSA or DI, that is Globus Data Access and Integration. So this tool were developed in UK, United Kingdom, eScience program, and it provides access to the relational and XML database. If you want to connect to relational database or extensive markup language database, it is providing the access so that you can store your data into these databases, right? Now, Now, if you see the MDS services, MDS is your monitoring and discovery services. So there are two vital functions we are using in MDS services. First one is monitoring. Monitoring means you have to monitor the computational resources, those who are participating in the grid. Next one is your discovery. You have to locate the resources, right? Where the resources is there. Like I have told you that in the replica location services, where the replica is stored, that location you should aware of that location. So that when there is a crash in a particular computer system or a failure of a computer system, you can retrieve the replica from other computer system, right? So you can see this is a Globus, you can say Globus MDS infrastructure, right? You can see there are containers are there. You can see there are 3 containers. One is GT4 container, GT4 container, GT4 container. In each and every container, you have monitoring and discovery services. Okay, and here you can see grid resource allocation manager is there. Suppose a client is requesting something, then that will be taken care by grid resource allocation manager. And here there is a adapter is there which connect one tool with another tool. Like grid FTP is a tool, RLS is a tool. So these are integrated to the adapter. Okay, and you can see there is a web DMDS is there. Okay, which is connected to your MDS index, right? And your replica file transfer, right? RFT, sorry, reliable file transfer is attached to this MDS index, right? So this is the GT4 system monitoring and discovery infrastructure. Now, if you see here, the GT4 provides a range of browser-based interface. You are interacting with anyone. If you go for BOINC also, there is a portal is there, or there is a application is there through which you are accessing the things, right? So, there may be a multiple containers you have seen in the Globus MDS infrastructure. The different containers are there. They are built to carry out the MDS indexing. Somebody is doing MDS indexing. In each and every one, there is a indexing, grid FTP, grid file transfer protocol, and other functions that are required to conduct the monitoring and discovery processes, right? And it provides you a browser based interface and command line tools and web service interfaces that allows users to query and assess the collected information. Sometimes you can put a query that what is the status of my applications? My application is located to this particular site, right? So what is the progress of that application? Such type of query. And if you want to collect some information about the resources, if you are an authorized user, then you are going to get through this browser-based interfaces, right? So a web MDS service is also configured via this XSLT transformation to create a specialized view of the index data. In order to maintain the data through indexing, we are using a web MDS. You can see web MDS is connected to the MDS index. Okay, this is all about our GT4. So similar type of features are also provided by our China Grid support platform. That is nothing but maintained by China Grid, right? So this CGSP, that is China Grid support platform, was developed by 20 universities in China for building China Grid. I told you 20 universities are integrated together. They are sharing their resources so that any kind of scientific engineering applications can be run, okay, in China Grid, right? And if you see here, the package offers the first step towards the multi-domain web services. They support multi-domain web services. CGSP is supporting you the multi-domain web services, and CGSP also offers software platform rather than a toolkit library. It is providing a platform like BOINC is also providing platform. Similarly, CGSP is also providing platform to perform the work. So what kind of works you can do? CGSP, you can do the image processing applications. If you are going for satellite image processing, you are capturing the image from the satellite and you want to do some analysis based upon that particular image. Such type of applications are supported by CGSP. Bioinformatics applications, if you know the genes and if you want to modify the genes, and if you know that genes of a particular thing, how to modify, how to get better product, so that such type of applications are also supported. Distance education, that is learning. Many Indian universities are also providing distance education, like MCA courses and BCA courses, PGDCA courses. They are providing as a distance education, right? And computational fluid dynamics and large scale information processing, they all are supported using in our China grid, right? And if you want to see the functional blocks of CGSP, I will show you. These are the functional components. These components there in the CGSP library. They are service container, security manager, information center, data manager, execution manager, domain manager, grid monitor, and port channels. These are supported by your CGSP. Many things are coming like quality of services, how you are going to deploy the services, how to make a secure communications, how to maintain the metadata management, and how users will communicate with heterogeneous resources, all are supported by our CGSP. Now, if you see, China Grid aims at constructing a public grid service system for research and higher education, because researchers require high computational power that may not be provided by a single organization. So, if a platform like China Grid will be provided, then they can do such applications, right? Whatever, in especially PhD students and researchers, they can work in these projects which require more computational power, which is provided by our China Grid, right? And the CGSP also integrates the resources, and resources are heterogeneous resources, so that this research work you can do, right? Especially educational resource like educational and research resources is distributed over CR and NET in China, so that you can perform your experimentation using China Grid, right? And CGSP is provides a grid platform for grid construction from the top portal level to the integration of underlying resources. In the top level, you have interfaces. you have portals. From there, the underlying resources in the bottom layer, you have hardware. Everything is integrated through a grid platform, right? And if you see also this China grid, that is CGSP system, supports uniform management of heterogeneous resources, portal building, job definition, service packaging, grid monitoring. These are the things are supported by our CGSP. And CGSP also provides an extensive grid framework to serve primarily the top 100 universities in China, right? So all the universities of the China are using this particular framework for running their applications. Okay, so it is providing such a framework to perform the experimentations. Similarly, CGSP provides a set of application programmable interfaces and toolkits that enable the end user and developer to write grid-enabled program. So you can invoke these APIs and toolkits so that as a researcher, what you can do if you are belongs to one of the organization, one of the universities of the China, you can write a grid-enabled program, right? Without the program, how you can access the resources, right? You can write the program, and using that program, you can query, you can assess, you can reserve the resources, or you can ask for the resources for a particular period of time, right? And you can deploy the application through this particular program. Okay, if you see the working execution flow of a CGSP, in CGSP, if a job is submitted to CGSP, suppose as a user, you have submitted a particular job to the China Grid Support Platform, that is CGSP. Then what are the steps it has to follow to provide you that services that are given here, right? So first, the grid service container. So you have seen in the previous GT4 also, we have container, right? So here what happened, the grid service container should include the allocated resources, allocated resources, right? The container is going to provide you that resources. Then the resources are extracted through a service packaging tool and are included in the service container. The resources will be available within that container. Like a VM is under the virtual machine monitor or hypervisor. Similarly, these service packaging tools are there inside the service container. Resources are extracted through this particular tool and they are included in the service container. So here they are using three symbols. One is S1, S2, S3, and they represent three things. S1 represents the command line software, S2 supports the legacy program, S3 supports your service request. Okay, so they represent some symbols so that they can easily know what kind of things you want to do, right? The next is the job requests are submitted with SOAP message. They are invoking the simple object access protocol to submit the job, and the job manager is deployed in the service container. Okay, in the service container you have job manager. The job manager is going to handle this. Then what the job manager will do? The job manager is responsible for job request analysis. Whenever you are submitting a particular job, it first checks that whether the resources is available or not. If the resource is available, then it can provide to you. But if the resource is not available or whatever resources you are asking, that is the quality of service requirements you are specifying, that quality of service is not satisfied. Then what will happen? Your job will be rejected, right? But if the quality of services is satisfied by some resources under that job manager, then it is definitely going to provide you the services, right? The job manager is responsible for the job request analysis, service selection, and scheduling of the jobs and execution management. So job manager is doing these particular things. Next is each domain deploys a service manager which allocates service information from container to support other software modules. So apart from the job manager, we have a service manager. Job manager keeps the information about job, but service manager keeps about information about the various services, included web services and non-web services also. Your web services as well as non-WS also. All the information is kept by the service manager. So they are two different party to manage two different unit, right? In addition, you can see each domain has to deploy a domain manager. With respect to the domain, you have a domain manager to implement the functions of user management and other issues. In order to manage a set of users, okay, and the issues related to the user, we have a domain manager. Okay. Now, so you can see the complete flow is given in this particular slide, right? Starting with the job execution sequence, starting from a portal, you can see here three things what we discussed. One is job manager, right? Another is your domain manager. Okay. These two are the very important point, right? And there are set of containers are also there, right? That is managed here, right? So we'll go this discussion in more details here. Okay. So when an application is deployed, we have to follow a set of process, right? You can see there is a 8-step process is followed whenever an application is deployed by a customer, right? A customer is deploying an application into a grid computing infrastructure. So including the reliable communication, secure communication, these steps you have to follow. Okay. So the first step, what will happen? The user should register. As a user, you have to register. Like if you remember that as a user, you are registering with BOINC portal, right? Right. The very first step, you are registering as a user and acquire the certificate signed by the China Grid, because you have to prove that you are a genuine user. You will not misuse the computational resources. For that, you need to acquire a particular certificate from the China Grid, which authenticates, which shows that you are an authorized user to access the China Grid. Then the user, what user is doing? User logs into the grid portal or some interface that is given by the China Grid that you can access through a certain security protocol. Like nowadays, we are talking about HTTPS, secure hypertext transfer protocol we are using, and interact with the grid system through web application deployed in that portal. Okay. So first thing is you have to register. Second thing, you have to get the certificate. Third is you have to log in into the system using some protocol. That is the first step. If necessary, then what happens? The user uploads the input data required by computing job or request to the personal data space in the data manager. So whatever data you have for your particular application, that you may upload, okay, that is required to run your particular job or run your request. Okay, in order to run your application, you have data that you have to upload. Okay, and that will be stored in a data manager, right? Then the user can define the job. Let's say the job name is J1 by using the job defining tool. For example, you have submitted one job, you are generating one ID, that is job 1. I am submitting one, I am getting job 2. Another person is doing, that is you are getting job 3. Or one user also can create multiple jobs as well, right? So this job defining tool is going to define this thing. Then the job definition is then sent to the job manager. So after defining your job, that is job ID, okay, that is given to the job manager to track the everything. So with this ID, you can track in a later point of time. Next, according to the job process rule in J1, what you are going to do, which is stored locally, you have seen that in the device manager is going to maintain this thing, right? So the job manager queries the available services from the information center and helps to complete job 1. Once job 1 you want to assign to a computational resources, we have to search, right? We have to check which computational resources is going to provide you the services. Okay. Once you locate that particular one, then you can assign and complete your job 1. So it is the responsibility of the job manager is to initiate a query for available services, and based upon that, it will try to complete the job J1. Now, what information center will do? Information center is going to collect the service informations. Suppose your requirement is satisfied by 5 parties. Okay, 5 different peoples are ready to provide you the services. So such service information will be given by the information center, right? And they are using a push-pull model. Okay, they are requesting and they are getting the resources. So they are following the push-pull model. And if you see, information center also maintains a resource view, so that it can return an available resource list sorted by a certain rule. For example, if you want to sort the resources based on the price, it will do. If you want to see the availability, based upon the availability, you want to sort the resources, that also you can do. So you can view the resources in various angles. Okay. So the information center also will return the local available services. What are the resources that are available locally? What are the resources that are available globally? That's why you can see in the diagram, they have divided into 2 parts. One is locally, another is globally, right? And this information center is going to provide that facility to the job manager, right? Now, once this is done, this local manager part is done, it will query other information centers globally if required to satisfy your domain. Like sometimes the local, in the local available services is not sufficient. So it will go for global information, global available services in order to satisfy the job J1, right? Next is the job manager suppose selecting a particular service S2 because S2 is suitable as per the requirement given in the J1 and sends it to allocated computing nodes, right? That is the fifth step. The next step is the service container receive the request. You can see there is a lot of service containers are there. So they are receiving the request. Okay. And once they are receiving the request, they need to invoke the SS interface provided by the data manager, right? They are invoking the data managers. They are retrieving the input data from the data management and accordingly they are going to provide you the services, right? Then the service container is going to execute the services. Once the data is collected from the data manager, it has started working on that particular services, right? That is done in the sixth step. In the seventh step, what will happen? The job manager is continuously collect the service status. Once you are submitting your job, you should not sit idle. You have to monitor that whether your job is working or not. That is nothing but your service status, because it may happen that the node is failed, it may happen that there is a delay due to some problem, right? So you have to continuously collect the service status in the execution processes to report the information to the user through a portal or interface. So you will say that your job is 50% completed, your job is 70% completed, your job is 10% completed. That you have to specify. So when the job is completed, the service container moves the computing result to the personal data space of the data manager, right? Data manager's personal space, it will keep the data so that the user can extract the result from that place, right? So this is the process followed by CGSP in order to submit a particular job and execute that job in the entire system, right? Now, before discussing the next topic, that is grid application trends and security measures, this is the last topic of Unit 5. So let me take a poll now. So I told you about monitoring and discovery services. So there are two functions are there in monitoring and discovery services. So you have to point which two are appropriate one. Which two are the vital functions of MDS services? Okay, so let us continue our discussion on grid application trends and security measures. So here in this part, we'll see the applications of the grid computing. So already I mentioned many applications of grid computing, just we are summarizing it. So for the finding the drug, right? Finding the medicine, finding the vaccine for various diseases like HIV, AIDS, dengue, right? And malaria, grid computing has contributed a lot, right? Scientific discovery, engineering design, environmental protection, government management areas, or you can say many companies are also using grid computing for drug discovery, economic forecasting, seismic analysis, e-commerce, cloud services, all factor where you require massive amount of processing or massive amount of storage, then grid computing has contributed in that particular domain. Okay, so it is applied to solve computationally intensive problems. Where your computation is a concern, suppose you have written a very big program and that program is not sufficient to execute in your computer system, then grid computing provides you a facility that you can run that program into your in the grid system, because your single computer system is a limited capacity, right? We have only 4 GB of RAM, we have only 1 TB of storage. So if you need the processing using, let's say, 1 TB of RAM, right? 1 TB of processing you require, right? The capacity, if the RAM capacity is increased to 1 TB, whatever work you can execute, the same amount of work you want to do uh, in some problem, right? So you can switch to grid, right? That's why grid has provided a lot of applications, and it is generally a voluntary applications, but later the point of time, grid is also economic grid, is in which the user is using economic grid and they are also paying the money for that for getting the services. So in this table, you can see some of the grid computing and relevant theories and technology. Like, you know that cloud computing is related to the grid computing, right? In fact, the grid computing is the backbone of cloud computing. So in the cloud or grid technologies share some common resources and infrastructures, right? What we have discussed. And P2P computing, right, is also in which each and every peer is independent of each other. So here voluntary grid computing can benefit from this P2P computing technology. You are also seen that is high performance and high availability cluster system. Cluster supports your massively parallel processors. You can run many things through by the help of the cluster manager. Cluster manager is going to coordinate with multiple resources. Next is data center automation. Data center is providing you the virtualization concept, in which you can run multiple virtualization on top of the physical machines. That also related to our grid computing. So supercomputer may be attached, workstation, servers, PCs, everything is connected in the case of grid computing. Next is fuzzy theory and reputation system. Okay, in fuzzy theory and reputation system can be applied for trust management in grid and cloud. Like whether a particular grid computing services is popular or not. Or if you want to use China grid, right? Whether that is popular or not, right? The organization have three choices. Then it has to see that which reputation is better. Based upon that, we can select one. Similarly, game theoretic optimization, game theory also applied so that two people can compete each other to achieve their goal, right? That are the various technologies that are related to our grid computing. Okay. Next is, suppose let us discuss couple of time for grid workload and performance prediction. So grid performance is directly related to the collective load. If number of resources, computational resources is more, then you can get massive power to solve a computational intensive problem, right? So grid performance is directly proportional to how many nodes are connected to the grid, right? So it is directly related to the collective workload to be executed on a large number of processors in participating the grid sites. So multiple grid sites are is connected. Okay, so in which the resources are there, right? And these grid sites are providing the processor power, computational power, so that you have a large number of processors in grid, right? And they are sharing the workload as well. So, but predicting the workload is very much challenging. How many resources will be available after 1 hour? How many resources will be there continuously up to 1 hour? So, such type of prediction is required, which is very challenging in the case of grid, because you can see heterogeneous resources are highly distributed under the control of different organizations. Like I told you, the nodes which are participated in the grid, they may join or they may leave at any point of time. So if a particular point of time most of the resources are left, then what happens? You cannot achieve the grid performance. Okay, the number of processors that are contributed by various organizations, if they left at the same time, then what will happen? The performance will be affected. That's why predicting the workload at what time, based upon the past data, you have to see that how you can predict the future things, right? How many resources will be joined in the upcoming days, that also you can predict, right? So this grid workload is represented by a collective load index among all the processors. So they are represented by a collective load index among all processors. So let the load index is treated as xt, a variable we are taking xt. Okay, it is in the function of time. T is your time and x is a function. And what xt represent? Xt is the percentage of processors utilized within a unit time interval t minus 1 to t. So let us consider within the time interval t minus 1. For example, let's say t is equal to 5 seconds. So I can say t minus 1 is 4 and 5. So within the 4 to 5, within 1 second or within 1 minute also, you can say, if you are the time unit is minutes. So within this time interval, what we are calculating? Percentage of the processor utilized. Like our computer system also, we can watch that how much whether the processor is utilized fully or not, right? Or how much percentage of time the processor is busy. So that is defining by the help of this load index. So all discrete time instances T are denoted as a non-negative integer. Obviously, time is in non-negative integer. So we are calculating from 4 to 5. Similarly, in the next cycle, we are calculating from 5 to 6. Next cycle, we are calculating from 6 to 7. So by observing this pattern, we can predict the performance of the grid, right? So, for example, let us take a 5-minute step, right? We can assume that that 5 minutes per time step. 5 minutes means you can say within 2 interval we are taking 5. That is also possible. Each 5 minutes we are going to predict the things based upon the data. The load index reflects the CPU utilization rate among all processors in the grid. The processors that are participated in the grid, we are talking about the whole processors, right? So based upon that, we are going to analyze it. For example, if xt is equal to 0.45, okay, xt is your load index is 0.45. What it implies? It implies that 45% of the processors are busy during this period. So if I'll take 5-minute period, within 5-minute period, I am getting the whole load index is xt is equal to 0.45. Then I can say 45% of the processors are busy, rest are completely idle. Means 55% they are not busy in this particular period, right? So I can say that if the number of resources will reduce, then whether this 45% will be managed by the current available resources or not, that you can visualize. Okay, so you can see that two grid workload traces come from this our grid and grid 5000 in France. Okay, they are monitoring, based upon that they are suggesting the things, right? Now I'll show you a picture so that the idea is more clear. So you can see here, T is your current time. This T is your current time, right? And you have observed the sequence from here to here. You have seen the workload is going like this. That is your nothing but your historical real workload value. These values are real. At this time the load is more, at this time the load is less, here also load is less. So you are present at this point T. What you have to do? You have to forecast the thing. You have to predict the value for T to T plus N. For this N amount of time, you are going to predict how many resources will be required and what is the resource utilizations that you are going to predict, right? So for this, you have a process, right? Like you can see the current time is marked as T, right? And the real workload is shown by a series of dots up to time T. So this is the real workload and this is the predictions. So you can see these are the dots and these are the star marks. Okay, these are the dots and these are the star marks. Star marks is the predicted one. What will happen in the future? But this data is the confirmed data, right? Which we have seen in the past, right? So the future load indices can only be predicted beyond the time t. So we want to predict for t plus n. That is our objective. So the conventional prediction scheme, like one prediction scheme is there that is called as ARP. Okay, ARP method if you use here, which predict the future load indices using load information from the past P point. We are looking the past P point, based upon that we are suggesting for the next couple of time. That is, we are following here ARP method, right? So as n step look-ahead process predict the load index of xt plus 1. So you can see here the current time is t. So you are going for t and t plus n. So initially your present is xt and you are predicting for x of t plus n using all the loads that are in a historical interval. You are taking historical interval, that is the time for, let's say, w amount of time you are observing. Based upon that you are predicting up to x of t plus n. So that is nothing but a look-ahead kind of thing. Just if you remember, in operating system also we have a optimal disk scheduling algorithm. In that we are looking in future. We are look ahead. Based upon that we are deciding, right? So here you can see instead of predicting a point value which may not be accurate, these values are only predicted value. It may not be accurate due to the load fluctuation. So we are expecting that it will go like this, so it may not be, right? So we are using here a confidence window. The confidence window is nothing but x of t plus n, right? Starting from t to t plus n, within the range is xl of t plus n to xu of t plus n. These we are observing, right? Now, if you go for the workload traces in the grid 5000, grid 5000 is also a very big project in which 9 different sites are there, specially used in the France. So if you go for grid 5000, the grid workload traces on grid 5000 are shown based upon the traced experiments conducted in 2006. So if you see from the January, you can say in the year of 2006, January 2006 to, they have analyzed up to October 2006. They have conducted the experiments to know what is the load variation in grid 5000, right? The number of systems that are connected to grid 5000, they analyzed and they got, here you can see that in the January, the load is around 10%. And if you see in the July month, the load is around 30 to 35%. Okay. So they have done this experiment and they traced in between this January to October 2006 to observe how the resources load is fluctuated or utilization of the resources is done, right? So job log entries of grid 5000 consist of two types. So they are managing that the jobs that are run successfully, okay, or they are failed. Sometimes you are submitting a job to the grid and the job is failed due to some constraint. So that is one status you are maintaining in the log file. Or if the job is successfully executed, that also you are maintaining in the job log file. And the measurement errors were possibly caused by failed jobs and by erroneous job entries. So errors are generally generated when the job is failed or the job is having the some erroneous instructions, right? Then that job is failed. So what they observed here, the average workload on grid 5000 system, if you see in this forecast period especially, that is only 10.6%. You can see in some cases it is below 10% only. If you see these ones, these are below 6, this is the 10, right? This one is 10. So you can see maximum time the resources are utilized below 10%. Okay, so during this observation of 10 months, grade 5000 was lightly loaded. As you can see, the maximum one is 30 to 35%. What it indicates? It indicates they are not fully loaded. If it is more than 80 to 90%, then we can say something. And these loads are fluctuated. You can see a lot of fluctuations are there with respect to this particular time period, right? And they have collected 3 different traces. First trace indicates sudden local change. Sudden local change means immediately there is a change. You are there in the 10%. Suddenly there is a spike to 35%. Your computer is utilized 10%, but suddenly it is increased to 35%. That is the first one. Second trace, they have done the sudden level change. The level of one at the time xt and the level in x plus t plus 1 is suddenly changed. Next one is there is a gradual change. Gradual change means now it is 10, after some time it is 11, 12, 13, 15, something like that, then it is increased to 35. So these 3 experiments they have done in the grid 5000 to observe the patterns of the grid workflow, right?